Thank you.
Of course.
All right, so my topic introduction. Today I wanted to talk about flow, who was created by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Csikszentmihalyi was one of the forerunners and co-founders of positive psychology. He was one of the first to research and really identify the stages of flow. And flow is this idea of putting ourselves in an optimal state of experience. So the idea is that we put ourselves in a state by which we can be absorbed by a challenging but a doable task. And I think for flow, that's really going to be quite significant. If we pick a task that is too challenging for our skill level, it's going to create anxiety. If we find a task that our skill level is too high for, then it's going to create boredom and apathy. So the idea is finding that sweet spot or really finding the flow.
Keeping yourself occupied without just going over the limits.
Exactly. And what I really appreciated about this idea and reading the article on the 8 stages of flow was research and finding out how Csikszentmihalyi came to process and identify the characteristics of flow. And the article talks about him interviewing musicians, and we're not talking about musicians who are still needing a tutor, because he talks about that being the difference between intrinsic, meaning you are already a master of it, and extrinsic, meaning you still need some skills. So he is looking at people who have this this intrinsic skill. So he's looking at musicians, he's looking at athletes, and these are people who have described to him that being in that state is like it's flowing out of them.
You're just continuously creating, not to a certain goal, but just to achieve progress.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so some of the key points that we saw in the video that we watched, and then from the article that we read, flow can be experienced through many activities. You don't have to be a musician, or you do not have to be an athlete. For me, as an English professor, I often experience flow when it's 4 a.m, the house is quiet, the television is off. I could be writing in a personal journal, or I could be developing today's activities, my lecture that I'm going to be doing for class. And before I know it, 2 hours have elapsed, and I did not even
You're
notice.
really in your own little world. Nothing's coming in from the outer world to impair your flow.
And it's a really good feeling.
It is.
And it gives you that sense of, I accomplished something.
All on your own.
It wasn't like pulling teeth either. So I really like that idea. And not one group can experience this. All groups can experience. Anyone from any different gender, people from different socioeconomic backgrounds can experience it. Different cultures can experience. What I did find interesting in this piece that we read is that autotelic persons do tend to be a bit more natural in the flow process. And these are people that tend to just naturally strive to do things in their life. It's not like they set out with the to-do list.
They just have so much energy. They just want to create continuously.
Exactly. So very natural to them. So the article talks about what happens to the brain during flow, and I really liked the portion where it talks about the prefrontal cortex, and it kind of being like this energy spot. And when we're not in flow, it's just kind of a firing. But during flow, what we get is it's kind of silence just a little bit that allows us to get into that state of meditation.
It really reminds me of when you're in traffic and you know the way home already, and then you take it and then boom, you're home.
Oh, that is perfect. That's a perfect example. How many times have you ever been driving in traffic and you've wondered how you've gotten home? kind of scary.
It is really scary, but it's like you memorize it when you think through it, but you're just such in a state of like, it's not challenging because you've done it for so long, you went to the road for so long, but it's stimulating enough because there's new cars, there's new things to keep your mind preoccupied.
Absolutely, absolutely. Fantastic example. So the article also talks about how do we achieve flow? And really it boils down to we need to find something we love,
right?
And we need to keep doing it. Do it, practice, practice, practice. I remember being an undergraduate, and I did not love writing essays. I mean, I was good with English. I liked the literature part, but the writing essays, like, it was almost like pulling teeth. And when I got up to my master's and I'm writing 20-page, 30-page, 40-page essays,
right,
I enjoyed it. And it's because it took years and years and years
to reach that level where it's no longer challenging.
Exactly. And now I love to write. I absolutely, you know this. Audrey was a previous student of mine, and the discussions I'd go, answer this.
They were very helpful discussions, very in detail.
Thank you, Audrey. Oh, you're so kind. Another part I really loved about this, don't flow alone.
Right.
You're going to have the optimal experience. Studies have shown that people who are in a community, in a group, doing an activity together, especially when they're able to speak about it to each other, they're going to have a more optimal experience. Yeah, and I saw it with us the other day when we were doing God's Eye. I mean, even though I sat there, do you remember how many times I like took mine apart and said, I am not doing this right? And then you were there to go, hey, you know, do it like this. And then we're just all talking about stuff.
It really helps eliminate the challenge of when you like, it eliminates a stopping point and continues the progression very smoothly.
Yes. And I love that. And, you know, some students who were there, they were able to make three.
That one person made it with the cool stars and everything.
Yeah, 5 sticks across. I'm like,
and it made the challenge all the more easier for the rest of us when you see someone else is doing it with you.
Absolutely. So I want to talk to you about just kind of your personal experience and your thoughts on, because I had you watch the video as well, and we talked about some of the key points. So we talked about people throughout history being goal driven, and we talked about this idea of them like looking for the meaning in life. So what are your ideas on that? Is this true?
I believe it is, because people very much are given thinking that they have a purpose in life, whether it's a career driven, and it goes back definitely to that Lacan theory of where you're always eating but you're never full, and having that purpose in life but not exactly being able to put a label to it, which makes the flow state all the more, it makes more sense because that is the purpose. It's just to continue the progress of being a human, creating and expressing through whatever means that needs to be, without having to struggle for it, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I love that. All right, so we talked about, you watched this video. What were some of the key points that stood out to you?
The key point that stood up, hold on, let me get my notes real quick because I have it written down. The key point that stood out to me that I really liked about it was the idea of the couch potato, how we feel guilty at the end of the day when you wake up, you check your phone, you stay on your phone, and then you move just to a bigger screen, the TV, and you're really not doing anything with your body, and it makes you feel guilty because you have these tools at your disposal to be doing something that isn't that challenging, like going for a walk, maybe reading a book, doing some art, anything, and you're just not doing it. It makes you kind of feel less than human, sort of say, like more just a robot.
Yeah,
no one wants to feel that way.
Cog in the wheel of the machine.
Yes, exactly.
Sort of thing. And I really like to expand on that point, the narrator saying, but people tell me that being on Facebook all the time makes me happy. And the narrator's like, no, it doesn't.
It really doesn't.
Not truly happy.
No, because it just feels that, again, the Lacan theory, it's that short dopamine, especially with TikTok, with my generation, how many people go on TikTok and spend hours of their day, and then they come to the realization they wasted days just
Yeah.
spending on your phone, and no one likes that realization.
It is so funny. What you just said makes me
Mhm.
think about the rat experiment where the rat can push the button
Mm.
and the cheese comes out, and they do it with drugs as well.
Yes.
The drugs come out, And at the end of the day, when the rat can push the button and eat all the cheese at once, you have a really overweight rat that has produced nothing during the
Exactly.
day. So it works the same with humans.
Yeah.
Excellent. I love it. Can you give me like details from when you personally have experienced flow?
A lot of times when I'm doing art, especially stippling art, where it's just putting a bunch of tiny dots, you typically what you do is you map out where you want the shading to go, and you figure out the darkest to lightest of the values, and then you just start plugging in dots.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I like putting on a podcast or something like Creepcast I've talked to you about, where it's just a creepy story where I can listen to it and go along, and I don't have to worry about messing up my art because it's something so simple,
Yeah.
yet it changes up where you have to be conscious of how close the dots are, how far apart the dots are. And it's good enough because it's stimulating, but
Yeah.
I'm not bored and feeling like I'm doing a task that's never ending.
Yes.
And then at the end, it's really fun because you see this really cool piece and you're like, ah,
Sense of accomplishment.
it is a sense of accomplishment. And you really do need that little bit of challenge
Yeah.
to feel that.
I completely agree.
Mhm.